Let's talk about a moment that shifted the entire mood within the BTS fandom. It wasn't a comeback, it wasn't a scandal in the traditional sense, it was a live stream. On December 6, 2025, RM, the leader of BTS, turned on his camera, and what followed was a raw 30-minute session that felt less like a casual check-in and more like a carefully worded, emotionally charged address. He looked tired, he sighed deeply, he mentioned he hadn't been sleeping, and right off the bat, he clarified something to a commenter. He wasn't struggling or bearing some immense burden, he just wanted to talk. But as the minutes ticked by, it became painfully clear this was a direct response to a rising tide of frustration, criticism, and outright anger that had been brewing in certain corners of the fandom, particularly among some Korean armies. This wasn't just a chat, this was damage control, a plea for understanding, and a stunning admission of the limits of his power, all rolled into one. To understand why this live stream felt like an earthquake, we have to rewind a bit. BTS had completed their mandatory military service, with the last member Suga discharged in June 2025. The timeline was set. A grand group comeback was slated for spring 2026. But for a segment of the fan base, that wasn't fast enough. The second half of 2025 felt empty. Where was the group content? Where was Run BTS? Where was the constant stream of 7-member live streams they'd been used to before enlistment? A vocal minority began to voice loud complaints online, framing the hiatus not as a necessary period of rest and preparation, but as a waste. This noise amplified on platforms like Twitter, where algorithms, as RM himself seemed to hint at understanding, can turn a minority opinion into a deafening echo chamber. The pressure was mounting, and it was aimed not just at the company, HYBE, but at the members themselves, with some fans even comparing members' individual activities and leveling accusations about who was working hard and who was slacking off. Then another layer of tension was added, the swirling rumors around member Jungkook and aespa's winter. It was classic K-pop dating rumor fodder, alleged matching tattoos, sightings, and wardrobe coincidences that sent shipping communities and detective netizens into a frenzy. While never confirmed, the speculation created a background hum of gossip and scrutiny. This context is crucial because it highlights the environment RM was speaking into, a fandom where every personal choice, every delay, every offhand comment was being hyper-analyzed and often weaponized. So, when RM started his live, the subtext was thick. He began by tackling the wasted time critique head-on. Addressing the frustration head-on, he made it clear the group shared the same desire to be active. However, he revealed there were definitive, concrete reasons for the decision to remain quiet in the latter part of the year, reasons he was not at liberty to disclose, stating simply that he did not possess the right or the clearance to speak on them. This was a bombshell. It wasn't just "we need more time to prepare." It was an admission that external, likely corporate and logistical factors, possibly related to HYBE being a publicly traded company with complex schedules, were at play, factors beyond even his control. He expressed his own frustration, his own desire to perform, but emphasized the sheer scale and pressure of a BTS comeback. "The scale is big," he said. This statement powerfully refuted the growing sentiment among critics who claimed the group was lacking motivation or effort. By highlighting the immense complexity behind their return, RM challenged the simplistic assumption that any delay was due to idleness. But the most explosive part of his monologue was about leadership itself. RM stated, "I can no longer represent our team." He elaborated that in the early years, up until around 2017-2018, he felt a responsibility to take charge, to be the spokesperson, to handle things. But now, he said, the members are actually individuals. Each has their own boundaries and lifestyles. The implication was stunning. He was essentially saying he could no longer and would no longer be held accountable for the individual actions or controversies of the other 6 grown men in the group. He couldn't go to the company to speak for them or tell the members certain things. This was widely interpreted as a direct reference to the pressure he might have been feeling to manage the dating rumors or to answer for the group's collective schedule. He was drawing a boundary publicly, and in doing so, he was highlighting a fundamental clash in K-pop culture: the expectation of idol leaders as parental or managerial figures versus the reality of adults in their 30s with autonomous lives. The live stream peeled back the curtain on the intense psychological toll this environment takes. RM spoke candidly about his insomnia, his struggles with self-hatred, and the difficulty of managing his own mental health, let alone an entire team's image. "The idea that I could single-handedly steer the direction of everyone else, I can't even grasp how that would be possible for me right now." Through this rhetorical question, he explicitly acknowledged the profound and frequently overlooked obligations inherent to his position. Fans were heartbroken to hear hear him say that even reading comments asking for other members during his live streams was hurtful. This was the leader, the eloquent, philosophical Kim Namjoon, admitting he was acutely affected by the noise. It paradoxically proved his point. He hadn't changed into some untouchable superstar. He was still deeply sensitive to fan sentiment, which made the criticism cut even deeper. The reaction to the live was a fandom split screen. International armies largely flooded social media with letters of support emphasizing "we love you as you are" and criticizing the demanding faction of Korean fans. Many Korean armies, however, felt unfairly generalized, pointing out that the loud, entitled voices were a minority and that most were patiently waiting. The incident sparked a meta-conversation about fandom culture itself, about gaslighting idols with love, about the toxicity of comparing members, and about how the traditional K-pop fan idol contract was straining under the weight of BTS's global maturity and age. Analysts pointed out that RM was attempting to transition the relationship from one of paternalistic oversight to one of mutual respect between artists and audience, but the transition was proving messy and painful. In the end, RM's December 6th live wasn't about a single scandal, but about the scandal of constant pressure. It was a revelation of the behind-the-scenes battles that never make the glossy magazines: the corporate machinery, the weight of expectations, the struggle for personal autonomy within a system built on control, and the emotional fatigue of a leader trying to bridge an impossible gap. He closed by tying it all back to art, stating that to create meaningful music, they had to live their own lives, flaws, relationship, quiet moments, and all. RM posed a powerful question that struck at the heart of the issue. If an artist spends every moment performing for the camera with no real life happening off screen, then what truth or feeling could their music possibly hold? He framed this not as an excuse, but as a core artistic principle. In his view, the private experiences of the members, the quiet struggles, the personal relationships, even the controversies, were not separate from their creative work. They weren't messy distractions to be hidden away. Instead, he argued that this raw, unfiltered living was the essential fuel. It was the very substance from which genuine art is made, implying that to demand a curated, conflict-free existence was in fact to demand art that was empty and meaningless. They were the very source of it. The controversy, therefore, settled not with a resolution, but with a profound question left hanging for the fandom. Do we trust these artists to live and thereby create on their own terms? The answer to that would define BTS's next chapter far more than any comeback date.